Good afternoon. This is Pat Churchard. Welcome to something of a first for the Rumford Club. This afternoon's webinar was suggested as a substitute for the club dinner in March. You'll recall it was cancelled because it was an early victim of the sort of COVID-19 lockdown. Before we start, I'd like to thank CIBSE, particularly Richard Howard, for hosting this event and their assistance in setting it up. Also to Seb Gray, who's done a lot of work in the background to get this thing up and running this afternoon. Now I'd like to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Cameron Foley. Cameron was due to speak at our dinner in March, and he's kindly agreed to take part in this venture into the virtual world this afternoon. Cameron is Chief Operating Officer for Invennt, a company specialising in innovative ways to add value to the construction process. You will have seen from his personal bio that in the past he was Operations Director for Skanska Rashley Weatherfoil. So he comes to us with M&E qualifications, so to speak. Today he's going to talk about how the mechanical and the electrical sector and the benefits that can be derived from research and development, sometimes carried out in the normal course of business, but he will talk about that as we sort of go on. Traditionally, speakers are questioned by Rumford Club members at the conclusion of their presentation. Today is no different, but in a rather different format. On your screen, you should see a panel containing a facility to write questions as Cameron goes through his presentation. At the end of his presentation, I will put your questions to Cameron, and we'll see how we go. And that, over to you, Cameron.
Okay, thank you very much, Pat. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Pat, the Rumford Club, and all of you members, and also CIBSE for inviting me along to present. It's not quite how we'd planned it, Pat, but it's good to make it happen online anyway. So Wi-Fi permitting, I'll be presenting on a topic that could help the bottom line of your business, and that can only be good news in these difficult times. My background is actually in contracting, and I've spent the past 30 years or so with Skanska, working in various divisions, including the Building Services division, and that was prior to joining Invennt a couple of years ago. I started out in civil engineering, or more specifically the foundations and geotechnics elements, and then I had a couple of years working for Taylor Woodrow, and that was with Tim Fitch and Brendan Morahan, who are actually the co-founders of Invennt. And the most relevant part of my experience, as Pat mentioned, is when I was working for Skanska Rashley Weatherfoil as Operations Director. It was actually a favourite time during my career, because I got to learn and understand a lot more about building services. And we were working in the public construction field. And we were building hospitals, schools, prisons, and military bases. And it was a really steep learning curve for me. But that's where my appreciation for building services really began, particularly with the complexity of bringing a building to life by integrating so many systems. It really fascinated me, and I became a fan of what you all do on a daily basis. My last job in Skanska was as MD of the Public Construction Division, and I was responsible for quite a large portfolio of projects worth well over £1 billion, and they were projects such as Royal Papworth Hospital, Great Ormond Street Hospital Phase 2, the new AstraZeneca Global Headquarters in Cambridge, and the Bristol Schools Local Education Partnership. And on those diverse projects, I always made sure that our building services colleagues were front and center of everything we did. Because as we know, a building without services is just some steel and glass heaped on top of each other, and there's not much use until that switch is thrown. So I've been asked to present to you about how we've helped a number of our building services colleagues through their businesses by claiming R&D tax credits. Now, some of your day-to-day activities may well be classified as research and development, and some of the costs associated with those activities may also qualify for R&D tax credits. And we've been helping a number of our building services clients to claim back R&D tax credits through uncovering qualifying cost. Quick introduction to Invennt. There's a team of 16 of us, and the first thing to say is we are not tax accountants, but we are all construction specialists in our fields. Tim, Brendan and we've got just over 100 years of construction experience between us. I'm sure they won't mind me saying that. But that's also supplemented by our team who have a mix of academic and project experience. And that also helps us to dig a little deeper when we're working with you to uncover those qualifying activities on those projects that we identify. We're a specialist business consultancy. We only operate in the construction sector. Again, we've got offices in London, Toronto, and Dublin. And we're always challenging ourselves to create value for our clients, of which we have over 60 from tier ones to specialists. And we aim to help businesses achieve their goals, and we generate the momentum and drive to succeed. And one way of creating value that we've worked hard on to understand is the R&D tax credit scheme, which is again administered by HMRC and the government themselves. We've had lots of negative press within our industry, and actually we're our harshest critics, I think. But if you look around the built environment, we've achieved some fantastic results by working together. And we want to celebrate that and bring it to everyone's attention. And that's why we want to be at the core of a positive construction sector. Lots of negative press around projects being late and overrunning, but we want to celebrate the built environment, and we're a voice where we try and create that drive and positivity around the sector. So, as Pat was saying, one of the 4 core offerings that we've worked really hard to understand is the R&D tax credit scheme, which is operated by HMRC. And what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years is translate the very complicated definitions within the BIS guidelines and the tax authority's definition of R&D. And what we've done is we've studied it, we've analysed it, and we've applied it to construction. So what we've done with contractors, engineers, consultants, architects, and others within the construction sector is to help them understand the type of activities that they could be claiming for under the research and development arm, because believe it or not, we all do it. In day-to-day work, there are lots and lots of instances where we are overcoming technical challenges and we are solving problems, all of which, as I'll come to later, is as described by HMRC. So since we've been doing this, we've uncovered around about £42 million worth of qualifying cost for our clients, which sits directly with them in their pockets at £16 million. And we have a report that we published with the IC, Mind the Gap, and we as a business, because the fact that we are construction experts and we can question in a certain type of way, we can dig a little bit deeper, that we get a great result for our clients, and are claiming just over 40% more than the average tax claim. We always approach with a conservative viewpoint, but even still, we are able to achieve some fantastic results for our clients. So I'll just give you a brief introduction into the R&D tax credit scheme. And I have a couple of worked examples, and it just gives you a flavour of some of the activities that we have been successful in claiming for our clients, particularly around the building services elements. And that may get you thinking about some of the activities and day-to-day elements that you carry out that may mirror, or you may recognise some of these aspects. And that might get you thinking about, if you aren't currently claiming, then that might get you thinking about claiming. And if you are claiming, then it might get you thinking about whether you can claim a bit more or not. So just to set the scene, so research and development tax credits, they're actually administered by HMRC, and they were introduced by the UK government in 2000. So the tax credit scheme is 20 years old. The UK government actually pinched it from Canada. Canada had been operating it for about 15 years beforehand, and the UK government took it on board. And it's actually designed to encourage innovation by allowing businesses like yours to reclaim some of the money that has been spent on developing new or improving existing products, services, and processes. So it's quite a wide and varied description. And it's really about understanding that and focusing in on what those descriptions really mean. As you can see on the right-hand side, UK businesses claimed just around about £3.5 billion in tax relief during financial year 17. That number is continuing to rise, and it continues to rise, I'm pleased to say, in the construction sector, but that's mainly through information, education, training, and understanding from businesses like ours, who can assist, help you weave your way through the minefield of language that's used. And we tend to simplify and play it back to clients in language that they understand, which is a construction language that we all know and love. So what's in it for me? If you are a loss-making business, then you can claim for around about £33 in every 100. So it's about 33% that you can get back that you've spent on qualifying R&D expenditure. And that's the key thing. It has to qualify, and it has to be linked back to the definitions that HMRC have published. If you are profit making, then you can claim around about 25% on your corporation tax bill, which is, both schemes are extremely generous. There's another scheme which is for large businesses, and those large businesses, it works out at nearly 12%. So in terms of the benefit that businesses receive back, it's quite generous. It's quite generous actually in terms of being able to claim back for that qualifying element. So in terms of language, so research and development, according to HMRC, is any project that seeks to extend overall knowledge or capability within that field. So within the building services sector, this is about pushing knowledge and capability. This is about clever engineers sat in rooms thinking about overcoming a technical challenge or complexity. That this isn't about overcoming your run-of-the-mill issues. This is about overcoming something that really makes you sit in a room and scratch your head. It's also any project that uses science or technology to duplicate the effect of an existing process, material, or product in a new or improved way. That's a bit more techy. Normally, that's when businesses pair up with academia in order to explore new and challenging ways of delivering services for their customers or their clients. We tend to uncover less qualifying cost in that element, only because at the moment construction is not partnering with academia in the way that, for example, pharmaceutical industry is or other industries are. We tend to find that most of the qualifying expenditure or qualifying cost sits within the processes or services that are extending the knowledge or capability or that are making the appreciable improvements. So the extension of knowledge, the creation of a process or service extending that knowledge, or any appreciable improvement to an existing process, material, or service. And by appreciable improvement, that's a bit more than a tweak. It's a significant improvement in what you do and how you do it and how that's delivered to the end user. But as you can see, the descriptions are fairly generic, but that's where we need to dig a little bit deeper into that. So in terms of relevance to the construction industry, and particularly the building services industry, what you do every day is you solve technical problems. Now, that's not to say that every single project that you work on can qualify for R&D expenditure and therefore be subject to a tax credit claim. It's particular projects where you are specifically developing or improving the methods, either the materials, the use of plant or design, and particularly including temporary works, where swapping in and out kit or retrofitting 19th century buildings where today's modern regulations make it difficult to fit that kit in and make it perform as it should perform, particularly where you're trying to achieve BREEAM excellent, or you're trying to achieve a higher than usual specification, LEED Platinum or the new wellbeing standards or well building standards. So three words that we tend to use when we're talking to our clients about the R&D tax credits is easier, safer, greener. If you are making life easier, safer, or greener for your clients, and that means looking at different ways of tackling how you do what you do and how you do it, and advancing those solutions through the development of bringing different systems using different materials in different environments all together to achieve the end goal, and that end goal is something slightly out of the ordinary, then some of that activity could qualify for R&D tax credits. As I said earlier on, this is about information, education, and training of our industry, and construction sector companies or related companies. It's a huge proportion of UK PLC, so in terms of GDP, it's in terms of direct contribution, it's around 7%. Probably in terms of indirect contribution, it's nearer 10 or 11%. But as you can see, it's a very small percentage of claims that are made in the construction sector. Historically, pharmaceutical businesses and IT companies have had the lion's share of R&D claims over the past 20 years. The number of construction claims has steadily increased over the last 3 or 4 years as more and more businesses become aware of the tax credit scheme endorsed by and run by HMRC, and it's really up to businesses to challenge themselves as to what they do and how they do it on a day-to-day basis, to see whether or not that they can take advantage of this. And particularly what we've noticed at the moment is that the claims are coming through very quickly. We are having claims submitted and then paid within a few weeks at the moment. And given what's going on with government funding across the whole of the UK, across particularly the services sectors, it's quite remarkable. So we would obviously encourage you to try and understand a bit more about that, and to stake your claim where appropriate. Just go through what expenditure or costs can qualify. So there are 6 main headings. The lion's share of cost that we uncover is in direct staffing costs, particularly on the SME scheme, because most of the time you have clever engineers sat in a room, understanding a technical problem, unlocking new technologies, bringing system uncertainty together and making it more certain. You're researching for the environment that you are installing services within, and you are sat in a room generally working through these difficult technical problems. Some of these are run-of-the-mill, you would claim. Some of these are not run-of-the-mill, and it's the more challenging, difficult aspects that we would press you on, and perhaps they would be more akin to an R&D tax credit claim. You can also claim for subcontractors, but they can be claimed at up to 65% of their direct cost. So again, that's quite generous. You can claim for indirect staff, or externally provided workers, as it's called, and that's where you have maybe on a project you employ a specialist, maybe a fire specialist or an acoustician, or a sub-consultant that maybe a one-man band, if you like, that you employ on a particular job. You can claim, again, you can claim some of their costs back at 65%. And there is an application of overheads that is allowable within that as well. So you can pick up some of the finance team, for example, the estimating team, some of the engineering staff, because they're all contributing indirectly to the overcoming of a technical issue. In fact, estimating is a key area, because if you think about it, you may get a tender in from a client to price, or if you're designing something and you have lots and lots of iterations involving lots of different people, and you may not win the job, or you may choose to scrap the design, but the time has been spent. So interestingly enough, if you capture that time or make a reasonable effort to capture that time, then some of that cost can also be recovered. The other thing is about materials as well. If you are building mock-ups or prototypes to test a system or to understand the process in terms of construction, then as long as the materials aren't incorporated into the final works, then that's something that can be claimed for as well. So if you're a business that does lots of mock-ups or lots of prototyping, even again, if it doesn't go to market or it's just scrapped, that doesn't matter. The fact is that you've expended that time, cost has been incurred, and some of that cost could be claimed back on an R&D tax basis. So HMRC have a time limit on claims, and you have 2 years from the accounting period end, so we can go back essentially 2 years to claim for any activities or projects that have been identified. Now, HMRC, they understand that normally what they want, so the Holy Grail is contemporary records. Now, businesses that we deal with vary from one end of the scale to the other. Some have 0 records, others have fantastic records, but HMRC recognise that, and certainly for the first claim or two, if you're at the poorer end of the scale, then that's fine, because you can estimate time. A reasonable estimation of time spent is acceptable, although what you have to do is you have to take steps to make sure that you're moving to the other end of the scale where you're keeping sensible, reasonable records. So just to help understand or put a more practical angle onto some of the language that I've been using, I've got 3 examples where we've anonymized some of our clients' claims. These have been successful claims that we've completed, and they've been paid by HMRC, and we continue to make a claim year on year. There's no limit. Whilst there's a limit going back, there's no limit going forward. So you can continue to make claims or R&D claims year on year on year on year. Okay, so there's no limit on that. So just to give you a bit of a background, so normally building services is quite good ground for innovation, certainly in line with the definitions within the guidelines. And we had a building services client that we claimed for, and they were retrofitting equipment into an existing building. This was to BREEAM excellent standards, so currently there are less than 10% of buildings in the UK that achieve those standards, and particularly when you have to retrofit into an existing building where, as we all know, ducting has only got larger, kit seems to be only getting bigger. So to retrofit back into meeting specifications to meet BREEAM excellent, that was quite a challenge. So they looked at and investigated low carbon systems, because of course the floor to ceiling heights again were lower, so there was constraints that they had to manage through. I talked to her about bringing different systems together. Another analogy might be if you take, for example, a mobile phone. You can buy all the component parts off the shelf. In the main, they're mainly using the same components, but it's how you put those components together And as we know, there are a number of different smartphone providers around the world, and they put their patents together, but they're all using the same equipment. But it's about how you put them together to create something that's new and different. This is what this MEP business did, and this was about retrofitting. So that's one element of claim. So where you can retrofit into existing buildings is something that may or may not provide you with a challenge, but it's something to think about. We had a building services design practice, and they were looking at a whole series of regeneration projects, but particularly there was a sustainability aspect to it. Remember, easier, safer, greener. So this is about the greener aspects, and there was design services procured for a large regeneration project, where there was lots of modelling of effects for the energy efficient heating and cooling systems, particularly in and around the meteorological effects, and then how you integrate lots of multiple controls into a single building system. There's lots of trial and error, prototyping, lots of back analysis and modelling involved here. And this involved obviously integrating the meteorological conditions and the integration of energy management systems, including the various different types of plants, including ventilation, into the single building management system. Now, that again was another successful claim. We're not going into too much detail here because these are high level. This is just to get you thinking about what you do, how you do it, and the sort of elements that you could claim for. And there are certainly elements within these engineering studies that we claim for that were successful. It's not the whole element. There were parts of the project that we identified that were certainly worthy of the R&D claim. The third little study that we have, again, it's a building services contractor, and they operate as a consultant as well, and they had been testing and trialing the distribution of low voltage DC energy within a building, and they were trialing the use of DC power, and they had installed test panels and actually installed it into a building where they were doing lots of testing, trialing, recording of results, data, and looking to deploy that technology in an energy efficient manner. So because those activities, it was certainly looking at expanding, we talked about expanding knowledge and understanding in that field. That's what they were seeking to try and do. And during the recording of the performance of those systems, they had some very pleasing results that we were able to capture and put into a successful R&D claim. So just to move towards conclusion, so in terms of the tax credit claims, we've said before, there's some numbers there. We've been doing it for 3 or 4 years within the built environment. It's beginning to be much more widely understood by contractors and particularly building services engineers, and that will continue. It will only get better. The schemes are getting more generous, and with successive governments and successive budgets, the percentages that you can claim have only increased. People have asked me before, when, how long do you think this is going to go on for? We don't know, but in the last 20 years, there's been successive governments have, one, they've kept it, and two, they've made it more generous. Every time there's been a change to it, it's been a more generous change. So, the gauntlet's thrown down there from UK government is, if you can generate R&D, if you can make UK PLC a more successful place, if we can generate more business, if we can attract more businesses to come to the UK and spend their money, then that's something that the UK government is prepared to pay you back in R&D tax claims or R&D tax credits. So it's certainly something that's worth thinking about. Like I said before, it's operated by HMRC. The benefits you can take in corporation tax credits going forward, or you can take the benefits in cash. There's a number of different ways to take it, and your FDs should be able to help you out with that. As I said at the beginning, we're not tax accountants, but we understand the HMRC guidelines. We are construction experts, but we do partner up with tax experts who help us to check what we do and how we do it. But the value that we bring is the construction knowledge we have. We are able to dig a little bit deeper into the questioning and the uncovering of the qualifying elements of cost, because we have that construction knowledge. So with that, please have a look on our website, and thank you for listening. It's been an interesting, unusual experience for me doing this on the web. But and with that, Pat, I'll hand back to you, if I may.
Thank you, Cameron. That was really quite absorbing. Thank you very much. So far, I've got a couple of questions come up on the screen. One from Seb Gray, who's asked, how has the COVID-19 lockdown affected R&D credits this year?
Yeah, it's very pertinent question. Thank you. Interestingly enough, as I briefly mentioned, COVID-19 has had a positive effect on the timing and the timescales of which HMRC are working to. They've done a tremendous job in getting themselves equipped and ready for all of the issues that they're having to deal with. And that was a concern of ours. We thought that this might slow down the claims in terms of the timescales. But in actual fact, what they've done is they've looked at it in a pragmatic way and really understood that quite a lot of businesses rely on these R&D tax claims to help or boost their profits. And clearly in today's environment, this huge uncertainty, they've actually stepped up to the plate, and I think they've been excellent over the last few months, certainly during lockdown, in reviewing the claims and paying out in a timely manner. So my hat goes off to HMRC for really helping out, and that of course generates better income for our clients that have claimed for these tax credits, and they're pushing them through very quickly. So I've been very impressed with HMRC so far with how they've dealt with these claims.
Actually, that leads on to another question from Andy Hasty, asking, how long does it typically take to get the money?
Yeah, it's all about the money, isn't it? Typically what we're used to is we've seen typically about 8 to 10 weeks from submission of the report. So what happens is there's some information generated from your business, and normally that's information that is already in your possession. So we don't ask you to go away and write up anything other than information that you've already got in your possession. We have a look through it because we can read drawings, we can read method statements, we understand all that we put together a report, which is generally about 30 to 40 pages. And what happens then is that report is then submitted to HMRC. And from that point, we've experienced sort of 8 to 10 weeks typically before you get your money. But recently, just leading on from Sebastian's question, the fact is that it's been 4 weeks. It's been tremendous. So yeah, typically 8 to 10 weeks, but oddly during COVID, it's been a lot faster than that.
Okay, thanks. Roger Hitchin asks, is there a requirement to demonstrate that there has actually been a benefit?
Only insofar as there needs to be a demonstrable outcome. So when we look at businesses and we're trying to uncover qualifying elements, what we're looking for is an improvement. We improved by 10% or 30% in terms of either energy efficiency or waste management or something. We like to see either an increase in efficiency, and what tends to work is percentages work for HMRC. They like to know that, well, we started there, we did all these things, and we've improved it by X. So that's what we try and tend to look for. As I mentioned before, you're either at one end of the scale or the other in terms of record keeping, and that is important when you're getting into your third, fourth, and maybe fifth claims, because HMRC want to see an improvement in your own systems and processes to make sure that you're capturing the necessary information and data. But at the beginning, we can help to put you on the right path with that. But it's about uncovering that information in the first place.
Thanks.
I hope that's good.
I hope I'm saying your name right. Is it Zohan Duran asks, to claim R&D, do you need to spend a minimum amount on R&D?
No. The truth is, the qualifying cost is the qualifying cost. It can be as little, but obviously there's very little point in claiming for £3.50, is there? You wouldn't necessarily make a claim for a small amount of work, because it's effort versus reward, and if there's high effort, low reward, then perhaps as a business you would think it's not worth us claiming. But that's something, again, that businesses like us, we offer that service where you have what's called a discovery workshop, and then that uncovers the type of activities that you're carrying out, and then we can quickly put together some rules of thumb and work out what the claim could be, and then that's put to you, and it's up to the business whether they want to pursue it or not. And generally, there's a good balance there between effort and reward, and that's what we look for.
Okay. Question from me. Do you have to declare R&D early on in a project, or can it become a claim sort of post project completion?
Most of the probably first, second, and third claims that we do for a business are post, and that's what we mean by we moving to a better system of record keeping is trying to understand and identify pre is always better. But if you can identify and post is fine, but it's always better if you can get to a point where, again, through either information, education, or training of your staff within your business, that they understand, actually, crikey, yeah, this is a bit out of the ordinary, this is a bit unique. There are a number of elements here that meet the criteria for R&D tax credits, and therefore will flag it as an R&D project. That's the ultimate goal.
Okay, thanks. Question from Andrew Bowyer: can costs incurred during tendering also qualify?
Yes, they can, Andrew. And quite often we find that there's quite a significant amount of cost within the tendering process that does qualify. Because if you think about your strike rate, if you're winning 1 in 4 as an example, the other 3 that you've lost, you've still put in the same amount of effort into understanding the client's brief, putting a scheme together, and developing that to a point where it can actually be built. And that time is not wasted time in the R&D tax credit land, shall we say, because some of that time could be qualifying depending on the type of projects that you're working on. So yes, absolutely, the tendering process does qualify. If I can just make a quick point, Patrick, one of the key criteria is that you need to be a limited company, and we know that there are a number of building services companies that are LLPs. Unfortunately, as an LLP, you cannot claim. But if you are a limited company, then you can claim. I just wanted to make that very important point.
Yeah, that could be quite important for consultants, particularly.
Yes.
Okay. I have no more questions on my screen. We have a little bit more time if somebody wants to quickly type one in. No. Okay. Well, Cameron, thank you very, very much for that. That's been quite an interesting afternoon. Thank you on behalf of the Rumford Club. It's a very strange way of organising a meeting. Everybody sitting there, there isn't that real direct communication, unfortunately. But nevertheless, given all the circumstances we're living through at the moment, I think it's been quite a good way to do things. So on behalf of Rumford Club, thank you very much. And at that point, I'd like to bring things to a conclusion, I think. The sound of cheering. Andrew, the dinner was good. Yes. Yeah, sorry about that. Maybe next time. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you.